The door opened without a sound. Anderson stood frozen in the dark hallway, his hand still gripping the cold silver handle. His mansion was too quiet. No music, no voices, no footsteps running to welcome him home. Then he heard it. A soft laugh. A man's laugh. Coming from upstairs. From his bedroom. His heart slammed against his chest. He took one slow step forward, then another, his breath thick and heavy. He reached the foot of the stairs just as a shadow moved at the top. The bedroom door was half open. Inside, on the bed he'd bought with his own money, his wife Bonita lay tangled in white sheets with another man. Anderson's mouth opened, but before a single word could escape, a trembling hand suddenly covered his mouth from behind. "Sir, please be quiet," the maid whispered. In that moment of silence, Anderson's entire life was about to change. Hello, welcome to African Moonlight Tales. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share it with your friends, and most important thing, turn your notification bell so you can get informed when I dropped another amazing story. Drop your thoughts and reactions in the comments. What would you do if your spouse tried to kill you and you survive? Will you take a revenge or disappear forever? Anderson was not supposed to be home. Everyone knew he was meant to be in another country, closing a business deal that would take weeks. Even Bonita believed she had kissed him goodbye that morning with sweet words and soft smiles. "Take care of yourself," she had said, pressing her lips against his cheek. "I'll miss you." Anderson had smiled back, unaware that her eyes carried no love, only patience. What Bonita didn't know was that the meeting ended early. Very early. The investors agreed faster than expected. Papers were signed, hands were shaken, money moved. Just like that, Anderson was free. He stood by his hotel window, looking down at the busy street below, and smiled to himself. "I'll surprise her," he said quietly. "She'll be happy." He imagined Bonita's face when she saw him walk in. He imagined her smile, her running into his arms. That thought alone made him rush to book the next flight home. Anderson was a billionaire, but not the loud kind. He didn't shout his wealth or show it off. He worked hard, trusted people easily, and believed love should be simple. He grew up poor, very poor. As a boy, he slept on a thin mat beside his mother in a one-room house. When rain fell, water dripped from the roof. When food was scarce, his mother smiled and said she wasn't hungry. He had promised himself that when he grew up, he would build a life filled with peace. That was why Bonita mattered so much to him. She came into his life like a calm breeze, soft-spoken, beautiful, always saying the right things. She listened to him, laughed at his jokes, told him she loved him before he ever said it first. When he proposed, she cried. Or so he thought. Their wedding was big, cameras everywhere, guests cheering, Bonita looking like a dream in white. Anderson believed he had won both love and life. But love, like money, attracts thieves. The truth was Bonita never loved Anderson. She loved what he had. Before she met him, she already belonged to another man, Stephen. Stephen was tall, charming, and dangerous in a quiet way. He never worked hard, but he always dreamed big. He wanted money fast. Easy money. When Bonita told him she had caught the eye of a rich man, Stephen smiled. "Marry him," he said calmly. "We'll be patient." Bonita hesitated. "But you'll still be mine," Stephen said, pulling her close. "This is just business." And so she married Anderson with lies in her heart and another man in her arms. The maid's name was Amara. She was young, quiet, and often invisible. She cleaned, she listened, she watched. Amara noticed things others ignored. She noticed how Bonita smiled differently when Anderson was away. She noticed strange visits when a master was traveling. She noticed whispers behind closed doors. And she noticed Stephen. The first time she saw him, he came late at night, wearing a cap pulled low over his face. Bonita told Amara he was a cousin. But cousins didn't leave at dawn. Cousins didn't laugh softly in bedrooms. Cousins didn't hide. Amara wanted to tell Anderson many times, but who would believe a maid? So she stayed quiet, watched, learned, and waited. That evening, the mansion gates opened quietly. Anderson stepped out of the car, smiling. The guards were shocked. "Sir, you're back." "Yes," Anderson said happily. "I wanted to surprise my wife." He waved off any announcement. No calls, no messages. He wanted it to be perfect. Inside the house, the lights were low. Too low. Anderson frowned as he dropped his suitcase near the stairs. That was when he heard the sound, the laugh. Amara was cleaning near the staircase when she heard the door open. Her heart skipped. She saw Anderson. Her eyes widened. She opened her mouth to greet him, but then she heard it too. The laugh. Amara knew that sound. Fear rushed through her body. She saw Anderson walking toward the stairs, saw his confusion, his smile fading. She ran. By the time Anderson reached the bedroom door, Amara was behind him. When the door opened and the truth spilled out like poison, Anderson's mouth fell open. That was when Amara acted. She covered his mouth with her trembling hand. "Sir, please be quiet." Inside the room, Bonita turned slightly, unaware. Stephen lay beside her, relaxed, careless. They began to talk. Anderson's eyes burned with pain. Amara gently pushed a small phone into his trembling hand. "Record," she whispered. Inside the room, the lovers laughed. And then Bonita spoke words that would break Anderson forever. "This is perfect," Bonita said softly. "Soon, I'll accuse him. Abuse, violence. I already have pictures ready." Stephen laughed. "Half of his money will be yours. Then we disappear." Anderson's hands shook as the phone recorded everything. Tears filled his eyes, but his jaw hardened. Because now he wasn't just heartbroken. He was awake. Anderson did not move. He stood in the dark hallway, his back pressed against the cold wall, his wife's laughter still floating from the bedroom like a cruel song. His fingers felt numb as they held the phone. The screen glowed softly, recording every word, every laugh, every wicked plan. Inside the room, Bonita stretched lazily. "Honestly," she said, her voice smooth and careless, "Anderson is too trusting, too calm. He won't even fight back." Stephen chuckled. "That's why this will work. By the time he knows what's happening, the police will already be involved." Anderson felt something tear inside his chest. This was the woman he prayed with, the woman he shared dreams with, the woman he trusted with his name, his home, his life. Amara's hand was still on his arm, steady but shaking. Her eyes were wide, filled with fear and guilt, as if she was sorry for showing him the truth. Anderson slowly raised his other hand, gently asking her to remove it from his mouth. She did, but he did not speak. He couldn't. If he spoke now, he would break. Inside the bedroom, Bonita sat up suddenly. "Did you hear something?" she asked. Anderson froze. Amara held her breath. Stephen frowned. "Probably the AC. Relax." Bonita laughed again, brushing it off. "You're right. This house is always making sounds." Anderson closed his eyes. That laugh, it no longer sounded sweet. It sounded sharp, dangerous. Amara leaned closer and whispered, "Sir, please let me guide you." He nodded slowly. They took one quiet step backward, then another. The bedroom door remained half open, but the truth inside felt louder than any scream. Every step Anderson took away from that room felt heavy. The house he built with love now felt like a trap. Every picture on the wall, wedding photos, smiling faces, happy memories, mocked him as he passed. Anderson walked into his private study and gently closed the door behind them. The silence inside was thick. Anderson sat down slowly, like a man twice his age. Then, without warning, he broke. He buried his face in his hands. His shoulders shook. No sound came out at first, just pain. Amara stood frozen, unsure what to do. She had never seen him like this. To the world, Anderson was strong, untouchable, a man who controlled companies and countries. But here alone, he was just a man whose heart had been torn open. Minutes passed. Then Anderson lifted his head. His eyes were red. But something else was there now. Focus. That night, Anderson did something that shocked even Amara. He went upstairs. He walked straight into the bedroom. Bonita jumped slightly when she saw him. "Anderson," she gasped. "You're home." Stephen was gone. Too fast. Anderson already knew he would be. "Yes," Anderson replied calmly. "I came back early." Bonita rushed toward him, wrapping her arms around his neck. "I missed you," she said sweetly. Anderson stood still. He smelled her perfume. He smelled another man. but his face showed nothing. "I missed you too," he said. Bonita smiled in relief. She didn't notice his eyes. They were no longer warm. The next few days were torture. Anderson played the role of the loving husband perfectly. He laughed when Bonita joked. He ate when she cooked. He kissed her forehead at night. Bonita relaxed. She thought she was winning. Stephen returned, carefully this time. Amara saw him come and go through secret doors, hidden smiles, whispered calls. Anderson noticed everything, but he said nothing. Instead, he planned. He began to move money quietly, not to hide it, but to track it. He contacted a lawyer under a different name. He spoke to a private investigator overseas. He copied the recording in many places. Bonita noticed a change, but she misunderstood it. She thought Anderson was becoming weak. One night, while pretending to sleep, Anderson heard Bonita whispering on the phone. "It's almost time," she said. He suspects nothing. Anderson lay still, his heart pounding. Because he knew something Bonita didn't. He was not the one about to be accused. She was. One evening, Amara knocked softly on Anderson's study door. "Sir," she whispered, "I'm scared." "Of what?" he asked gently. "They might hurt me if they find out I know." Anderson stood up. "You are under my protection," he said firmly. "No one will touch you." "But madam—" "She is not your madam anymore," Anderson interrupted quietly. "Not for long." Amara nodded, tears in her eyes. Anderson handed her a small phone. "From now on," he said, "record everything. Every word, every movement." Amara hesitated. "Sir, this is dangerous." Anderson met her gaze. "So is trusting the wrong people." 2 nights later, everything changed. Bonita's scream cut through the mansion like a knife. Guards ran. Amara froze. Anderson rushed out of his study, pretending to be confused. "What happened?" he asked. Bonita stood in the living room, tears streaming down her face, her hair messy, her clothes rumpled. "He tried to hurt me," she cried, pointing at Anderson. The guards turned. Anderson's heart sank, but his face stayed calm. "What are you saying?" he asked softly. Bonita sobbed harder. "He hit me. He threatened me. I'm scared." She showed them bruises Anderson had never seen before. Amara's knees almost gave way. Stephen stood near the door, arms crossed, face full of fake concern. "I heard her scream," he said. "I came to help." Anderson looked at him. This was it. The lie had begun. The guards reached for their radios. One of them cleared his throat. "Sir, Madam says you heard her." Anderson nodded slowly. "I heard." Stephen stepped forward. "Officer, you don't need to ask her more. She's in shock. I saw everything." Anderson turned his head and looked at Stephen. Their eyes met. For a second, Stephen's confident look flickered. Anderson spoke softly. "You saw everything?" Stephen straightened his shoulders. "Yes. I came to visit and I heard shouting. I ran in. She was crying. You were standing over her." Bonita let out another loud sob. "I was so scared. He said if I ever left him, he would ruin me." The guard looked at Anderson again. "Sir, is this true?" Anderson shook his head once, slowly. "No," he said. "It is not." Bonita gasped like she had been slapped. "How can you deny it? After everything I've done for you." Anderson did not answer. Not yet. Within minutes, more people arrived, security, a driver, even a neighbor who heard the noise. The mansion, once quiet and proud, now felt like a courtroom without a judge. One of the guards spoke again. "Sir, until this is sorted out, we may need to call the police." Bonita clutched her chest. "Yes, call them. I want justice." The word justice burned in Anderson's ears. Anderson finally spoke again. "Call them." Everyone froze. Bonita blinked. "What?" "Call the police," Anderson repeated calmly. "I have nothing to hide." The police arrived within the hour. 2 officers stepped into the mansion, their faces serious. They listened as Bonita told her story again, louder this time, more dramatic. She cried. She shook. She held her bruised arm up like proof. Stephen added details. Extra details. The officers nodded, then turned to Anderson. "Sir," one of them said, "what do you have to say?" Anderson folded his hands in front of him. "I did not touch my wife. I did not threaten her." Bonita laughed through her tears. "Of course you'll say that." Anderson met the officer's eyes. I request a full investigation. Stephen's head snapped up. Why drag this out? Anderson's voice was steady. Because the truth takes time. The officers exchanged a look. Very well, one said. For now, sir, we'll need you to come with us for questioning. Amara felt her legs weaken. Bonita's lips curved slightly, just slightly. Anderson noticed. As he walked toward the door, he passed Amara. She whispered, barely moving her lips. Sir, Anderson spoke without turning. Stay calm. He was led outside. The mansion gate closed behind him, and Bonita finally stopped crying. The moment Anderson was gone, Bonita stood up straight. Her tears dried quickly. Stephen smiled. That went well. Bonita let out a breath. He didn't fight back at all. Stephen laughed. He never does. They clinked glasses of wine in the living room. Amara watched from the shadows, her stomach turning. She recorded everything. Bonita sank into the couch. Once this goes public, he's finished. The media will eat him alive. Stephen nodded. We'll take the money and leave. Bonita smiled. Half of everything. Amara's hands trembled, but she did not stop recording. At the police station, Anderson sat alone in a small room. The walls were bare. The light buzzed softly. An officer asked him questions again and again. Anderson answered calmly. Hours passed. Finally, another officer entered. Sir, he said, you can go home for now. Anderson stood outside. His driver waited. As the car pulled away, Anderson leaned back and closed his eyes. The pain returned, but so did his resolve. They think they've won, he whispered to himself. But the game is only just beginning. Back at the mansion, Bonita grew careless. She laughed loudly on the phone. She moved money without hiding it well. She invited Stephen openly. Amara recorded it all. Late one night, Amara knocked on Anderson's study door. He had just returned quietly. She handed him her phone. Anderson listened. Bonita's voice filled the room again. Once the court rules, he's done. I'll say he threatened my life. The bruises were easy. Anderson's hands tightened. How many recordings? He asked. All of them, Amara replied. Everything. Anderson nodded. Good. Amara hesitated. Sir, what if she finds out? Anderson looked at her gently. She will. Amara gasped. On purpose? Yes, he said quietly. The truth needs a stage. The next morning, Anderson did something unexpected. He called a press conference. Bonita saw the announcement on her phone and froze. What's he doing? She snapped. Stephen frowned. This wasn't part of the plan. Bonita's heart raced. He's trying to look innocent. Stephen stood. We'll attend. Let him talk. You'll cry again. Bonita smiled slowly. Yes, I'll act. The world will believe me. They did not know what Anderson planned. They did not know Amara would be there. They did not know the recordings were ready. On the day of the press conference, Anderson stood backstage, adjusting his suit. Amara stood beside him, pale but strong. Are you ready? He asked her. She nodded. Yes. You're brave, he said. She swallowed. I just want the truth. Anderson placed a hand on her shoulder. So do I. Outside, reporters gathered. Cameras flashed. Voices buzzed. Bonita arrived wearing black, her face carefully sad. Stephen walked beside her, protective. They took their seats. The room quieted as Anderson stepped onto the stage. He looked out at the crowd, at his wife, at the man who betrayed him. And for the first time since that night, Anderson felt no fear, only clarity. He leaned toward the microphone. My name is Anderson, he began. Bonita's eyes narrowed. This story, Anderson continued, is not what you've been told. A murmur ran through the room. Bonita gripped Stephen's hand. Anderson paused. Because what I'm about to say next will either save me or destroy everything. The room went silent. Every camera lens pointed at Anderson. Every reporter leaned forward. Bonita sat stiff in her chair, her fingers digging into Stephen's arm. She kept her head slightly bowed, acting broken, acting afraid. Stephen sat tall, his face calm, but his jaw was tight. Anderson looked at them both. Then he looked back at the crowd. This is not easy for me, he said softly. But the truth rarely is. A reporter raised her hand. Sir, are you denying the accusations your wife made? Anderson nodded. Yes, completely. A low sound moved through the room. Bonita lifted her head slowly, her eyes shining with fake tears. "How can you lie like this?" she cried suddenly, standing up. "After everything you did to me." Cameras turned to her at once. Stephen stood as well. "My friend, this is not the time to threaten a woman who is already hurt." Anderson did not react. He waited. He raised one hand slightly, asking for calm. "I expected this," he said. "I expected tears. I expected anger." He paused. "But I also expected the truth to fight back." Bonita's heart skipped. Anderson turned slightly to the side. "Amara," he said. A small movement happened near the edge of the stage. Amara stepped forward. The room buzzed. "Who is that?" someone whispered. Bonita's face drained of color. Stephen's eyes widened. Anderson spoke clearly. "This is Amara. She's a maid in my house." Bonita laughed sharply. "A maid? So now you bring servants to lie for you?" Amara flinched, but she did not stop. Anderson placed a gentle hand behind her back. "She is also the reason I am standing here today." Bonita's breath caught. Anderson looked back at the reporters. "The night my wife says I abused her, I had just returned from overseas. Unannounced. Cameras flashed. I walked into my house quietly. I heard sounds from my bedroom." Bonita shook her head hard. "Stop." Anderson ignored her. "I opened the door, and I saw my wife in bed with another man." The room exploded. Gasps. Shouts. Flashing lights. Bonita screamed, "Lies! Lies!" Stephen stood up angrily. "This is madness." Anderson raised his voice slightly for the first time. "Be quiet." The words echoed. The room froze. Anderson reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. "This," he said, holding it up, "is a recording." Bonita's heart began to race. Stephen's smile disappeared. Anderson pressed a button. Bonita's voice filled the room. Clear, cold, confident. "I'll accuse him of abuse. The bruises are easy. Half of his wealth will be mine. Then Stephen and I will leave." The room fell into shocked silence after the recording ended. Bonita staggered backward. Stephen turned pale. Reporters jumped to their feet. "Is that your voice?" someone shouted at Bonita. She shook her head wildly. No, it's fake." Stephen tried to move, but security stepped in front of him. Anderson wasn't done. "That is not all," he said. He nodded at Amara. She swallowed hard and stepped forward, holding up a phone. "I recorded more," she said softly, her voice shaking but strong. "After Sir was taken away by the police." The room murmured. Amara pressed play. Bonita's laughter echoed again. "He's finished. The world will believe me. He never saw it coming." Bonita screamed and rushed toward Amara, but guards stopped her. "Turn it off." Bonita cried. "Turn it off." Stephen backed away slowly. Anderson watched them both. This was not revenge. This was justice. The reporters were shouting now. "Mrs. Bonita, did you fake the bruises?" "Stephen, was this a planned setup?" Bonita collapsed in her chair, shaking. Stephen tried to speak, but no sound came out. Police officers entered the room quietly. Anderson stepped back from the microphone. "I have submitted all evidence to the authorities." The lead officer nodded. "Mrs. Bonita, Mr. Stephen, you are both under investigation for fraud, false accusation, and conspiracy." Bonita screamed. Stephen tried to run. He didn't make it 2 steps. Handcuffs clicked. Cameras captured everything. 2 days later, the courtroom was full. Bonita stood in the dock, her eyes swollen from crying. Real tears this time. Stephen stood beside her, looking angry and broken. The judge listened to the recordings. The judge watched the evidence. The judge frowned deeply. When it was time for Anderson to speak, he stepped forward calmly. Bonita burst into tears. "Anderson, please. I'm sorry. I was confused." Anderson looked at her. Once he would have felt soft. Once he would have believed her tears. But not today. "You were not confused," Anderson said gently. "You were calculated." Bonita shook her head. "Please don't ruin me." Anderson's voice stayed calm. "You already ruined yourself." The judge gave the final words. Bonita and Stephen were found guilty of false accusation, conspiracy, fraud attempt, and blackmail. They would face punishment under the law. The courtroom erupted. Bonita screamed. Stephen slumped. Anderson closed his eyes for a moment. It was finished. That evening, Anderson returned home. The mansion felt different. Not haunted, not cold. Just quiet. Clean. Peaceful. Amara stood in the living room, nervous, her hands clasped in front of her. When Anderson walked in, she quickly bowed. "Good evening, sir." Anderson smiled warmly. "Good evening, Amara." Amara's eyes filled with tears. "Sir, I was scared you would send me away. People like Madam, they always punish the poor." Anderson shook his head. He walked closer and held out a small box. Amara blinked. "Sir, what is that?" Anderson opened it. Inside was a simple gold necklace with a small pendant shaped like a tiny ear. Amara looked confused. Anderson chuckled softly. "Because you listened, and because you whispered the words that saved my life." Amara covered her mouth. "Sir," Anderson's voice became gentle. "From today, you are no longer just a maid here." Amara's eyes widened. "I want to sponsor your education," Anderson said. "Whatever you want to study. And I want you to be part of my foundation. We will help young girls who are treated like they don't matter." Amara began to cry. Real tears, happy tears. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. Anderson smiled. "Say the words you told me." Amara laughed through her tears. "Be quiet." Anderson laughed too. "No," he replied. "This time speak. The world needs your voice." Weeks passed. Anderson's name became stronger. People who once doubted him saw the truth. His company stabilized. His foundation launched a program called Be Quiet, Be Wise, not to silence people, but to teach them to stay calm, observe, and protect themselves with truth. Anderson visited his mother's grave one morning. He stood there quietly, holding the old ring. "I didn't know everything about Father," he said softly. "But I know you tried. You raised me with honesty." He placed flowers down. "I'm okay now. I'm free." A soft breeze moved through the trees. Anderson felt like his mother heard him. As he turned to leave, his phone buzzed. This time it was not a threat. It was a message from the police. Case closed. Justice served. Anderson smiled. He looked back one last time at the grave. Then he walked away, not as a broken man, but as a man who survived betrayal, found truth, and built a better life from the ruins. The end. What an incredible journey. If this story taught you anything about trust, betrayal, and justice, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories like this one. Drop a comment below telling us what you would have done in Anderson's situation. And remember, sometimes the quietest voices save the loudest lives. See you in the next story.